next session, Building Tech Bridges to the Next Billion Indians in the Healthcare Sector. I would like to introduce our moderator, Ranjith Menon, who's partner and executive director at Chiratae Ventures. Ranjith is a healthcare sector lead at the firm and has been in the venture investment advisory since 2007. Over to you, Ranjith.
Thank you, Vidya. Technology can play a significant, role in in addressing some of the challenges that we see in India, especially around healthcare, focusing on access, on affordability, and so on and so forth. To discuss some of this, we have a very stellar panel here today with us, and thank you to all of you for joining us. Charles, if I may start with you. You have this global experience of trying to balance profit and purpose, right? Interesting to understand from you as to how you seeing this whole reverse innovation process of companies taking technologies, innovations that have been built here, especially into the developed markets. What have you seen on that front, and what's been your experience with that?
I thought that India was the capital of the world in its potential to solve global healthcare access issues. And there's basically 3.8 billion people who lack access to essential healthcare services. And there's probably 700 million of these in India. But nowhere else is there in the world that same concentration of need for improved access with such a vivid pool of healthcare entrepreneurs, of reverse engineers and coders. And so that has led to, with on top of it, an extremely low price point per healthcare product and healthcare service unit, meaning that as soon as there's a product that has an ability to make a profit in India, serving the healthcare needs of the low and middle income patients, there's an ability to export that product and service very successfully globally. So first, there's the international potential of low cost, high quality from India to other fairly low cost markets around the globe that are wanting that same affordable high quality of care. And that's obviously what we're seeing in the exports from India to Africa, from India to Southeast Asia, and from India to Latin America. But then what we're experiencing in our portfolio at HealthQuad is that a lot of the companies that we have invested in for their potential in those low-income markets are actually being acquired by companies that are based in high-income markets, where they suddenly see that affordability in technological services and products is opening up a whole new gate and a whole new market that previously was underserved. And so that's what we're seeing, for example, in e-diagnostics, where a company in our portfolio that was designed for purely Indian and African low-income, semi-rural needs is actually of great interest to European, Middle Eastern, and American healthcare sensor companies who believe that with those affordable technologies, they can digitize a whole part of the physical healthcare services. And we see the same thing occurring at an accelerated pace post the pandemic. So obviously, we all knew that doctors and patients were objecting to digitization to a certain extent. With the pandemic, they were forced to embrace digitization, and with it came a rural population in India that was only 30% of healthcare transactions before the pandemic, now being 45% of it. And that's a phenomenon that has happened globally and hence the demand for Indian affordable healthcare technologies to serve all these new opening markets in higher income segments.
Yeah. Rashie, if I can come to you, I mean, cancer is an extremely complicated disease, right? I mean, and how are you at Onco trying to kind of democratize this across the value chain, across demographic?
Sure. So as you said, Ranjit, cancer is a very complex disease. It's actually not one disease. It's multiple diseases. Every cancer patient is unique. And oncology as a sector is a very big sector in India. There are 3 million cancer patients who are getting treated every year. And the incidence rate is alarming. It's 11%. Every year, 11% more people will get cancer. Now, if you think about the experience of care delivery for a cancer patient, it is massively broken. Right from discovery of the right service providers, right doctors, to an understanding of the right treatment plan, to having the confidence of getting started on the treatment journey. The entire experience from the patient point of view is extremely chaotic. We like to say that when it comes to healthcare delivery, especially of complex diseases, we are essentially living in a pre-internet era, right? Where the whole concept of getting care is localized to going to one hospital and meeting one doctor and putting your fate in the hands of that one doctor. With Onco, we are trying to change that model, and we are trying to make the entire process more patient-centric. We are saying that through our ecosystem, we centrally provide the best treatment guidance on the right treatment plans for cancer patients before they enter the hospital through our network of experts. So even before you get started on your treatment journey, the patient can come to onco.com, get consultation with a multidisciplinary team of specialists who are specialized for their condition, get complete information on what is the right treatment for them, sort of empower themselves with this information. And then through our network, we'll be able to manage their care effectively by essentially forming a treatment package where we can connect them with the right hospitals, right doctors, right diagnostics labs. And in this entire process, optimize for access, optimize for cost, and of course, make quality of care better because we can adhere to internationally accepted clinical guidelines on what is the best treatment for them. So we actually published this data at ASCO where we showed the outcomes, the impact Onco's opinion had on cancer patients who came to us and took an online opinion through our network of doctors. 83% patients who came to Onco had a change in treatment plan, which was a very shocking number even to us. And if I break this data further down, we saw that out of this 83%, 15% patients who came to us were actually previously on a completely wrong treatment plan. We were able to come in, advise them on the right treatment, and then get them started on that. 27% patients actually were on a wrong dose of chemotherapy drugs. So they were getting slightly outdated chemotherapy regimens or not getting the right dosage, which was impacting their outcomes. And 41% patients, which was something that was very shocking to me, was that they did not even have a complete diagnostic workup. So they started their treatment without having complete lists of tests done that would have guided their service provider to get them started on the most relevant therapy. So what this goes on to show is that with a neutral party like Onco coming in, we can actually intervene at a level where we can actually change the quality of care patients get by giving them discovery of the right treatment options for them, something that was previously not even available to them. But I think this problem is prevalent across the world. Our data is limited to India, but mistreatment rates in the US are as high as 33% as well. We have published research showing that. So this level of sort of misalignment exists at a service provider level across geographies. In India, it's obviously more acute because of the way, because of the limited number of specialists that we have, which exacerbates the problem. We have a lot of new technologies getting available at much cost-effective, in a very cost-effective way. So a lot of people actually have the potential to get them. The bigger problem is not many people know, which is what we're trying to solve.
Excellent. Sandeep, if I can come to you, I mean, longitudinal data is like the holy grail, right, in healthcare, right? And you at HealthPlix is kind of trying to solve for that in some form. But I'd like to understand how you're seeing this convergence, right? I mean, with data across the payer community, provider community, and the pharma companies, for example, and how are they viewing this, and what's your view on how this can kind of effectively lead to better outcomes?
Well, there's a huge gap in India and in many places where there is a diagnosis rates and then there is incident rates. Right? There's a huge gap in many diseases. It could be as big as 50%. Even though a patient is going to a doctor, the secondary disease or a tertiary disease may not be getting picked up. So it leads to a question around who is a good doctor, right? If a doctor is good, does it mean that through his experience, even with unstated symptoms, is able to pick up? That's when he becomes a good doctor, yes. But what if basic information about the patient, right, his longitudinal journey, how a disease has progressed, how a patient has responded to different treatments, all that outcome is made available in a seamless manner, an easy manner to any given average doctor. Does he become a good doctor, right? That's the reason why we have gone ahead at HealthPlix to make sure that for any doctor who's on HealthPlix platform, for any patient who's walking in, he gets to see a longitudinal disease journey. When he does that, the chances of medical errors happening go drastically down, and we have seen it time and again for various therapies. So that's one thing where we can democratize, given longitudinal journey, any doctor can be much better than himself, right? That's one. Two is, as you know, Ranjith, personalized medicine is also becoming a cutting edge, spoken about widely globally. So that happens because people respond for the same medicine. Different people respond differently. Like if I just pick diabetes, there are 532 different ways in which Indian doctors on HealthPlix platform has treated people, and many a times it's just trial and error. So now, how is doctor deciding? One is of course based on the data, which predominantly is not available when he's treating the patient. So now the onus of educating doctors goes back to pharmaceutical firms. So when I go to a doctor, when I educate, this is my new brand, and these are kind of sets of patients that you want, we want you to treat on. Is he really doing it? And what basis are you saying, this is how you should be treating? So that is the gap that we are trying to plug back when we go to the pharmaceutical firms by taking the real world evidence data from the patient back to the lab, stating this is how things are happening and this is how you need to, both on a commercial basis, from your medical reps angle, or even from your clinical R&D development angle itself. This is how medicines for different kinds of patients are. These are different kind of outcomes. So I think there's a huge interest, even in a country like India, where there is very little R&D cost that is allocated. There's a huge interest in terms of looking at real outcomes from the real patients at a real time. So as we build the solutions, to the point that Charles mentioned, I think while we're building the solutions for India, we see that there is a huge opportunity for the platform that we've built, even globally, because outcome data, whether it's in India or not, is still relevant for different kinds of personas.
Yousuf, if I can, come to you. You've been investing, in emerging markets, of course. I mean, Latin America, Africa, India, and I'm curious to know, what is that you've seen there when you compare to, sustainable technologies that you see here that they are doing, that possibly we can improve the penetration of these technologies into, tier 2, tier 3 cities here. That they have done successfully there that can be implemented here. What's been your experience?
And it's a great question. It's an ongoing challenge, I think. I will say that I think in the past few years, we have seen a significant improvement in access to tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 type of locations, rural areas, with technologies like Rashie's that leverage internet and technology to kind of reach those areas where otherwise specialists don't exist. I think maybe to start, I can highlight a few of the challenges that I see, and then I think where I think there are some of the possible solution areas that are underway. I think specifically within India, I see that most of the under-resourced markets are really addressed by the government. And so when you look at kind of a pan-India strategy for any medtech startup, it's really a state-by-state strategy. Each state controls its own budget for healthcare. It will determine its priorities for spending, et cetera. So a strategy across different states is very much required, which makes it a challenge to scale. So I think that's one, especially for startups to scale. I think the second challenge is that if you look at things like traditional med tech, then you have all these components that go with it: sales, service, support, training. And in a fragmented market, that can be very costly to build a network to do that, whether you do it direct or through distributor. And so really, and then the third piece of it, I guess, is that you just have this shortage of doctors and specialists in these areas. So you have to find a way to kind of bridge that gap. And I think that's where we see technology really playing a very important role in terms of bringing access, whether through telehealth or remote technologies, things of that nature, which not only provide the access through leveraging technology, but also can reduce costs. And I think that's also significant. So we're seeing a lot of business models emerging now that are more like software business models, healthcare as a service, things like that, subscription models, et cetera, which also can reduce cost. And then obviously, I think there's the final, piece of the puzzle, which is that, okay, you can provide diagnosis, you can provide consultation, you can reach possibly these patients, but then what? If they have to go into hospital for a procedure, if they need to go in physically for any reason, there are the logistical challenges of in these rural areas, how can you kind of connect those dots? And then also, I think to Charles's point, I think that India is very much a leader in this globally. For all the reasons that he stated, I completely agree with. And so actually what we see as being oftentimes some of the most successful implementations in Africa are in fact those that are in India, that have extended their networks and decided to sell either through partnerships, et cetera, into Africa. So I think India is very much a global leader in this respect.
If you think about healthcare, right? I mean, impact, sustainability, all of this. How do you view this, right? I mean, both as an investor or as an entrepreneur, is this viewed as something that is an outcome of what you do, or do you think about impact being the cornerstone of strategy, right? In that sense, I mean, how?
Okay, Ranjith, I think the vision for all of us is, at least for me, is when we started HealthPlix, it was all about driving health outcomes at a country level, because you see it on a daily basis that things go wrong, good or bad, doctor, but things go wrong, right? So the vision is always to look at driving health outcomes, right? Impact is the reason why I think HealthPlix exists. Right, everything else, I think the revenue model, everything else is secondary. But I think speaking for HealthPlix, I think the primary vision is to drive impact and health outcomes.
Completely resonate with Sandeep. I'll just add that for us, the way we measure impact is we see what treatment journey the patient was on before they engaged with us, what positive intervention were we able to create in their treatment journey, whether it was at a diagnostic level, whether it was at a treatment level, whether it was just on the holistic aspect where we provided them additional guidance on nutrition, but basically made the entire care delivery process smoother and in terms of outcomes, positive for the patient. That's the only way we measure impact at Onco.
We at TEAMFund, for us, it's absolutely a mandate to have impact. And so we look for it, we identify it, we track it, we measure it. It's important. And I think similar to what Charles said, we'll look at this from kind of two angles. One is it's critical that we have entrepreneurs like Sandeep and Rashie, et cetera, who really are passionate about it. I think if you have founders and entrepreneurs who stay focused on it, then you have smart people who are focused on designing those solutions. Is really that, we also will look for technologies that don't just, solely address low resource markets, but really have a global opportunity. And that's where we'll, leverage our multinational network, et cetera, to try to help build successful companies and let them bridge into developed markets. Let them, make money and attract strong investors and hire good talent and all those things that come with it. And as those companies then grow, by nature, they will continue to impact the lives of many. So I think if you've got, kind of the combination of both, that's really the sweet spot. And those are the types of companies that we look for.
If you take a little step back, basically realize that nearly all the technologies and the intellectual property due to address the healthcare needs of 8 billion people has already been developed in the last 20 years and is right there. But nearly all of it has been directed to the 4 billion richest out of the 5 billion who have access to it, and 3 other billion have been completely left out. So if you think of it from an impact perspective, it's obvious that just redirecting that science and that technology to the 3 billion that don't have access to it by adapting those technologies, by making capital available, and by encouraging the best entrepreneurs to design business models that are affordable and scalable, is what's going to generate the greatest impact. And at the same time, if you look at a market that is very saturated, on which all the healthcare spending has been going in the last 20 years, and then next to that, you see that there's a market that's been nearly untouched, it's quite easy to come to the conclusion that you should be putting your money in that segment that is a much less competitive market, but with a much greater unmet medical need.
Dr. Farzan, one of the points that was raised here was that a lot of these technologies are just focused on the, healthcare is really focused on the top of the pyramid. Now that, with side care and stuff like that, what's your view on how private sector can really, what can they do to really push this down to the smaller cities, tier 2, tier 3 cities?
I think these technologies, thanks Ranjith, can have a big impact on preventative care as well as early diagnosis. Because even in a city like Bangalore, when we see cancer, we see it very late. Our outcomes are generally inferior to the industrially developed countries. And one of the main reasons is we see cancer very late. We do not have a system which incentivizes early detection. So I think that would be a good start, because it would also then drive down the cost of treatment.
I really, appreciate this conversation. Thank you to all of the panelists, and really, I think the message is very, very clear, and it's something that we also very, very strongly believe that, it is something, health is something that is very, very fundamental, need to be addressed, and seeing the gaps that we see on the technology can play a significant role in addressing this. And we are fairly committed to this. And along with, friends like Charles and Yousuf, we believe that the opportunity is there to kind of really make a difference, but at the same time, making sure that financial returns continue to happen. And with entrepreneurs like Rashie and Sandeep, we believe, the future is really, really bright. Thank you very much, all of you.